Today we're going to be working with hatching. So the first thing I want to show you is the difference between washing and hatching. What we've been doing lately is washing. And washing is when you go back and forth with one continuous motion. So there's one line. There's another line that's going over my first set of washing. So that's washing. And hatching is a little different. In hatching, you start with separate marks that go from one direction to the next. So I'm starting at the bottom, moving up. Now I'm going from the top, moving down. Each mark is separate. When I put those marks over each other, that's called cross hatching. So if you want to get deeper tones, you cross hatch. Hatching is just parallel marks like that. And then I'm going to cross hatch over them. So that is my example of hatching. If you're not used to hatching, it can feel kind of awkward and stiff. So one thing I do a lot is just practice hatching in my sketch diary or on a scratch piece of paper. And here you can see a page from one of my sketch diaries where I just practice getting various values and tones and warming my hand up some. So here's a page out of a sketch diary I had when I was in graduate school, and this is a study of a self-portrait by Rembrandt. You can see the longer study on top and then small quick studies below. What I want you to notice is that the long study is more developed. It's done with hatching. The smaller studies below were created to help me figure out how to make the larger study above. Here I've zoomed in on the smaller studies to show you that they can be really loose, just showing me where the lights and darks are so that it helps me make the larger drawing. I'm not spending a lot of time on those, obviously, just a couple of minutes each. This assignment I'm going to have you do a very loose master study, and normally I speed up my demos to save time, but what I'm demoing here is a quick study for my longer master study, and I'm going to show it to you in real time so you can watch it develop as it actually does in real time. And I want you to notice that because this is a study for my longer drawing, I'm not being very concerned about precision or making it look real perfect. What I'm doing here is a value study and just finding out where the large areas of dark and light are, and using hatching, practicing hatching to locate those areas. So you can see that in the middle left of the format, that's where the lightest area is, and that everything else is a little darker than that right now. And you can see that I changed the direction of my marks. I'm still filling in those white spaces, but this is really like weaving your marks together. It's like weaving a cloth. And you'll find the places where there's gaps and you'll want to fill them in. And I can see that it's darker in the bottom right corner. That's one of the darkest areas of the composition that I'm working from. And so right now, I've established that the lightest area is in the middle. The darkest areas are going to be on the bottom and then the corners actually. And then there's some more specific darks throughout the drawing, but I'm not going to worry about that too much until I get to them. So right now I'm just trying to work from the outer edges inward, changing the direction of my marks. It takes some practice to get used to hatching. To feel loose with it. I had to warm up a little bit before I could actually freely hatch on this. I did several little studies first. So you can see that in the middle on the bottom there's a mid-tone that is on either side of it are the darkest tones. So I keep bringing those out, but they're not as dark as they're going to be because I'm building up my values. You can see I'm working in a Sharpie today. I just want y'all to remember that you can make a drawing with whatever kind of materials you have on hand that'll make a mark. So I'm trying to show y'all lots of different materials and let you kind of get creative with what you use, what you have on hand at home. So as I continue to hatch, always starting in one direction, making a single mark. You see I'm always starting on the left and moving to the right on that little area. Continuing with that, breaking down, getting some subtler differences in the general darks. Sometimes I just have to think about which direction I want my hand to be aimed in and what direction my marks are going to be made in. I'm not using a lot of pressure with the Sharpie because I don't want it to get too dark. Just letting those values build up. Still keeping that left side light, but I'm starting to break those lights down a little bit. Just continuing to build up subtle gradations, continuing to hatch, not going back and forth, but going from one direction. Sometimes I get to going fast and it looks like I'm going back and forth, but I'm not. So I'm staying in the lightest area and making very subtle changes at that point. To me, this is kind of like carving. I start off with a broad, loose form, and I move in towards the form, and I let my marks get closer and closer to the edge of the form. I don't start off with the edge. I work from the outside in. So I just continue until my time is up. I set a timer for 5 minutes, and I just continue to keep developing my values and not worrying about whether it looks like something or not, just looking at where the lights and the darks and the middles are and trying to develop them. After I finished that study, I went on to develop it more into a longer drawing that I spent maybe about 45 minutes on. What I'd like to see is your studies, time yourself on your studies, and when 5 minutes is up, just let it be what it is. Then do your long drawing and set your timer for 45 minutes and see what happens where you're at 45 minutes and let that be your long drawing.